aware of not changing the heritage of the show.
Why did you miss the moment?
I started my career covering Wall Street. I did it for a decade. I traveled around the world with secretaries of state, defense, with presidents. I am a journalist, mother, the wife of a Marine, and frankly, someone who wants answers.
So do you think there is a communication problem here?
To be moderator of Face the Nation is not an anchor, it's not an actress. You are up here to moderate a conversation. That means bringing the most powerful stakeholders to the table to become better informed.
This was an act of sheer evil. More than 1,000 civilians slaughtered, not just killed, slaughtered in Israel. Among them, at least 14 American citizens killed.
I'm not going to vote for any candidate or any other measure until I have a firm plan in front of me that's presented by the 8 people to shut this government down.
Donald Trump is running to stay out of prison. And if we elect...
Hello, I'm Nancy Cordes in Washington. Welcome to America Decides on a busy day. The conflict between Israel and Hamas intensified today as the Israeli military took out what they said were Hamas strongholds in Gaza, and reporters got a close-up look at some of the atrocities carried out by the terrorists. At least 1,800 people have now been killed since the start of this war. Israeli officials say they've hit hundreds of targets in Gaza. And President Biden confirmed a short time ago that 14 Americans have died. U.S. citizens are also among some of the hostages taken by Hamas. CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tyab joins us now from Tel Aviv in Israel. Imtiaz, tell us what the situation is on the ground and how it has changed in the past 24 hours.
Nancy, you're absolutely right. It's an extremely tense situation on the ground, but of course, most acutely at Israel's southern border, where there's been a massive buildup of Israeli forces over the past 24 hours or so. We understand that 30-plus military battalions have been massing along that perimeter fence with Gaza, that very same fence which was breached in 6 separate locations early on Saturday, resulting in that horrifying assault we saw in which so many people have been killed. As you rightly point out, journalists have been slowly being given access to some of these areas where, frankly, horrific things took place, massacres, frankly, and all of that really just underscores the fact that the situation here is not only extremely tense, but many people are very concerned about what could come next. Nancy.
Imtiaz, what is it that the Israeli military believes it can achieve by going in with ground forces that it can't achieve firing missiles by air? I mean, they've said they've already fired hundreds of them. What do they think they can do if they go in with ground troops?
Nancy, you make a really good point. Over the past 24 hours alone, Israel has dropped 500 or so, or rather carried out 500 or so airstrikes inside Gaza. It is an extraordinary number. And when you look at the images coming outside Gaza, which has been bombarded so many times in the past, the devastation is astonishing. But the reality is that Israel understands that this situation is different. This is not like the 4 major conflicts that Israel and Hamas have fought over the last 16 years. This is unlike anything Israel has ever experienced. And more importantly, it is unlike anything Hamas has ever been able to achieve inside of Israel, for lack of a better phrase. And I think the reality is that Israel's trying to understand what to do next, and that is why we haven't seen that ground invasion start just yet. The reality is that when you look at the Israeli military, when you look at the Israeli intelligence, and frankly, you look at the failure in which led to the fact that they weren't able to stop this from happening or even know that an attack was in the offing, I think they are going to be very careful about what they do next. Nancy.
And Imtiaz, I imagine that one of the things that must give them pause is the knowledge that Hamas is holding dozens of hostages, and we've learned some of those hostages are Americans. How does that affect the Israeli military strategy here?
It changes everything. Again, we are in uncharted territory here. The fact that there are dozens, perhaps even over 100 people inside Gaza being held by Hamas, and what we understand scattered to four corners of the Palestinian territory, which is about twice the size of Washington, D.C., it is going to be extremely difficult for Israeli forces to go in and to try to rescue these people, let alone know where exactly they're being held. We have to remember that, as well as this heavily built up territory in which we see these images of, underneath all of that is a vast network of tunnels, and many believe that a lot of these people are being held in those tunnels. And so in the Israeli calculus, as they try to figure out what to do when they enter Gaza, and it does seem like they will enter the Gaza Strip on some sort of ground invasion, the question then becomes, what's it going to look like? Are they going to reoccupy the Gaza Strip, much in the way they did up until 2005? Will we see Israeli tanks on every street corner? Will we see Israeli soldiers on every street of Gaza? Those are questions we simply don't have an answer for, and it's something that the Israeli military is clearly still trying to work out for themselves. Nancy.
And Hamas has made a variety of threats when it comes to those hostages. Imtiaz Tayyab in Tel Aviv, thanks so much. Stay safe. In a speech at the White House today, President Biden called the Hamas attacks on Israel, quote, sheer evil. He said the U.S. will make sure Israel has what it needs to defend itself. The president also spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu earlier today about the situation. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us now with more on all of that. Ed, President Biden was really forceful in his condemnation of Hamas. Let's take a listen to some of his remarks.
There are moments in this life, and I mean this literally, when the pure, unadulterated evil is unleashed on this world. The people of Israel lived through one such moment this weekend. The bloody hands of the terrorist organization Hamas, a group whose stated purpose for being is to kill Jews.
Brutally critical of Hamas. And what did we learn about the U.S. response?
Well, he was unequivocal in stating that the United States will provide whatever assistance is needed by Israel. Notably, however, later U.S. officials made clear that that doesn't involve necessarily, at least for now, sending U.S. military forces into the conflict. Instead, much of the focus is going to be on deploying experts from the U.S. government, either in the military or other agencies that can help the Israelis extract the untold number of hostages that are still being held by Hamas. That is a top priority of this administration, which, of course, has had so many high-profile hostage negotiations in the last 2.5 years or so. But it remains a big concern here at the White House as they try to work through exactly how many Americans may be being held by Hamas, where, and what might be done by the Israelis to get them out. But it was also clear that, at least for now, there are no plans for, say, U.S. Special Forces or some other entity to go in and provide the physical extraction of those people when it's time to do so, which you know, we'll see if that holds. The other thing to keep in mind, there's now a U.S. carrier strike group in the Mediterranean close enough to this conflict that it's going to get noticed. It includes the USS Gerald Ford, which is now the most advanced aircraft carrier in the U.S. fleet. We've been told that this essentially is not a place for troops to launch from, but could be a spot from which, you know, groups that could help extract hostages deploys from potentially, and then brings them back. The other thing the president and the White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan signaled is it wasn't deployed to the region in response to Hamas so much as a deterrent to others, specifically Iran or Syria, Hezbollah, to get involved, and a real push to make sure that they don't, and thus widen the conflict.
Right, the president said in his speech, don't try it. You know, at the White House briefing, Ed, you asked the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, a question that a lot of people have been wondering about, how much Israel and the U.S. knew before this attack. What did he have to say?
Well, why don't we just take a look? Was there anything in what crosses your desk that would suggest that this was coming?
We did not see anything that suggested an attack of this type was going to unfold any more than the Israelis did.
So we at first asked, did the Israelis know anything about this? He says you got to ask them why they didn't. The U.S. did not either. This will inevitably become a question for lawmakers on the various committees, those of us in our line of work, to figure out why isn't it that this was on their radar screens, if at all. And part of the reason why it's worth asking Jake Sullivan is because just 10 days ago or so at the Atlantic Festival, which was co-hosted by CBS, he made clear that he had probably spent less time worrying about conflict in the Middle East than any of his most recent predecessors, that it was a quieter region in recent years, despite the concerns about Iran and the ongoing concerns with Saudi Arabia and the war in Yemen, that there just wasn't as much going on in that part of the world that merited White House attention. Now, of course, that has completely changed. And we'll see in the coming days how the White House explains exactly why intelligence agencies didn't pick up on it.
Ed, you also asked about the president's divided focus over the past couple of days, because we know he was interviewed by the special counsel in the case involving his classified documents both on Sunday and on Monday. What did you learn about the timing of that interview?
Not much more, Nancy. They insist that this was something that had been scheduled long in advance, but there's questions about why was Robert Hur, the special counsel, here to interview the president on Sunday and Monday? Was that part of the agreement? Did Sunday's interview have to get postponed in part because of the response to what was going on in the Middle East, so they asked him to come back on Monday? Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, and frankly the spokesperson for the White House counsel's team have not said why perhaps the president didn't ask for it to be rescheduled. This is in keeping with the current White House policy of not discussing the details of this ongoing investigation and being as tight-lipped as possible to at least publicly demonstrate that they're being cooperative with prosecutors as their investigation continues.
White House working very hard to make sure we know that the president had lots of calls and meetings that did not involve the special counsel on both days. Ed O'Keefe, thank you so much.
Take care.
Many U.S. lawmakers want to get aid to Israel as fast as possible, but that can't happen without a House Speaker. We'll bring you the latest on the race for the top post in Congress next. We're streaming America Decides.
Well, let me start with this.
This really happened.
Have you told the government?
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response? You want me to just keep going?
What's wrong with that argument?
What have you learned?
Do you know why?
Why? Why?
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
If we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS Reports.
You had a substitute teacher that was pretty popular. What was his reputation?
Everyone loved him.
You had to miss a test. What did he offer to have you make up the test?
He said that I can come by after school was all over and just take the exam. The blinds were down. He closed the door. The next thing I knew, he was right next to me. That's when I realized what was going to happen. Even if I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs, no one would hear me because no one was there. He told me that if I ever said anything to anyone, he would kill me, and he would kill my family. So I did it.
Pledge of Silence, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
He was there when the war in Ukraine started.
Extreme history. It's a big moment.
The extraordinary story behind Sean Penn's new Paramount Plus documentary, Superpower, when we go person to person.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discovery, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Why did you miss the moment?
I'm not sure why they missed the moment.
It doesn't look like Congress is doing anything.
That's the role of Face the Nation, to focus on the issues at hand. That means a civil conversation with perspective.
Welcome back to America Decides. While war rages in the Middle East, the U.S. House is at a virtual standstill as the Republican conference works to elect a new speaker. Congressional action is essentially stalled until that vacancy is filled. CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian joins us now from Capitol Hill to discuss. Okay, Nicole, catch us up. Has there been any movement in the GOP effort to find a person who can get 217, 218 votes?
Well, I think both Majority Leader Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan think that they are getting closer. They really have been making the rounds all day today ahead of a candidate forum this evening, meeting, for instance, with members of the Republican governance groups. That is a group of lawmakers who represent a lot of swing districts. They also met with members of the Florida congressional delegation as well as the New York delegation. And so both leaders, we caught up with both of them, and they say they feel pretty good about where they are.
Where do you think you are on votes, sir?
I think we're good.
We're doing great, and have a great support from all of us.
So they continue to meet with members, of course, at this candidate forum. They will both make their individual pitches about why they think they are best positioned to become the next speaker. One person who now appears to be taking their name out of the running is the former Speaker, Kevin McCarthy. As we know, he said last week that he would not run again, but then he seemed to leave the door open yesterday when he said that it would be up to the Republican conference to decide whether or not to nominate him again. And late today, he said that he is now asking members not to nominate him, although I did talk to a few late this afternoon who say they are still behind the former speaker, but unclear if anyone is going to put his name in the hat officially.
So still a bit of a will he, won't he when it comes to McCarthy. I know that the two front runners are expressing confidence to you and to other reporters. They have to do that. But how confident are the members that they are going to be able to select one of these individuals or someone else by Wednesday?
Well, as you know, Nancy, it remains a very fluid situation. As of now, we are expecting the Republican conference to convene Wednesday and hold an internal test vote. There are some who believe this can all be wrapped up tomorrow, and then there are others who say that they need more time. Congressman Max Miller telling reporters last night that he feels that they should have an extra week to try to work through some of their issues. I did catch up with a few members who plan to attend this candidate forum to get their take on what they're looking for in the next speaker.
So then what do you want to hear from them tonight?
Well, and obviously I'm interested to know what they feel like the direction is in the immediate future. That's going to be very important. And also, as you all know, health care is extremely important to me.
I'm not voting for anybody until I see a plan. We were stuck over in the conference room, not being able to do anything for the people.
Members have a lot of concerns, whether that's fiscal matters, whether that's the issue of rules. A lot of members are calling for changes in this motion to vacate where any one member can oust the speaker. So a lot of members want to see change behind that. And then also, of course, as you know, Nancy, we're also facing potentially another government shutdown next month if no action is taken. So there's also questions about what these two leaders, how they might approach that situation. Will they adhere to the deal that Kevin McCarthy struck with the White House earlier this year, or will they go in a different direction? So there are a lot of questions that are still unresolved, which is why this could either be wrapped up quickly or be drawn out.
And obviously, Congress can't do anything on Israel aid or anything else until there's a speaker. So how frustrated are members about that? And how are they feeling about the potential debate to come over Israel aid, Ukraine aid, or both?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of questions with respect to that as well. Certainly I think there's a general consensus among members, both Republican and Democrat, that action needs to be taken as soon as possible with respect to Israel. We already saw, for instance, House Foreign Affairs Chairman Mike McCall introduce a resolution today condemning the Hamas attack against Israel, also reaffirming Israel's security, and also pressing for full enforcement of U.S. sanctions against Iran, which some have suggested may have had some involvement here in this attack. So that being said, even something like that can't be acted on until there is a speaker in place. And of course, you can't even have a discussion about aid either without a speaker in place. So there are many members who that's one of the reasons some members do want to get this wrapped up so they can carry on with the business as it relates to Israel and as it relates to funding Ukraine. Some suggesting even those two should be tied together. Other members opposed to that.
Now, this House situation now becoming not just a national issue, but an international issue, at least when it comes to Israel and Ukraine. Nicole Killian on Capitol Hill, thank you. Former Texas Republican Congressman Will Hurd's 2024 White House bid has officially ended. He joins us next to discuss who he thinks is the best candidate in the GOP field. They're streaming America Decides.
Our story's just begun.
Why did you want to share your story?
Water up this high? Where are these coming from?
That's the $1 million question.
I'm a very curious person. I wake up every morning asking, what's happening in the world? Why is this happening? And how do we answer that question on the CBS Evening News?
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We aim every night to be factual and fair. That's our goal.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Controversial Congressman George Santos.
Why won't you answer our questions?
How did he manage to get elected?
Thank you very much, and God bless you, and God bless the USA.
George Santos' campaign was a campaign of deceit, lies, fabrication.
And who is he, really?
I knew him as Anthony DeVolder from Queens.
Really, who he is, he's a fraud.
I compare him to the Tinder swindler.
From people who know him, the truth, the facts, the lies.
He would say that he was worth $100 million.
It's an incredibly cynical episode in American politics, beyond satire.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I hope I never see it again.
Campaign of Deceit, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Since childhood, she never stopped reaching for the skies. Now she's spent more time in space than any other American.
I like being a part of something bigger than me.
Peggy Whitson's extraordinary career as a history-making astronaut when we go person to person.
Feel the forecast on the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell.
I think I asked direct questions. I don't know that they're tough questions per se.
Why aren't you holding yourself to that standard? It doesn't look like Congress is doing anything. What has to happen?
That's the role of Face the Nation, to focus on the issues at hand. And that means a civil conversation with perspective.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this?
Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Today, I am ending my campaign and endorsing Joe Biden.
That I'm delighted to endorse and support Joe Biden for president.
He's uniquely the candidate in this field who can beat Donald Trump in November.
Welcome back to America Decides. Back in 2020, several Democratic candidates united behind Joe Biden to help him secure the party's presidential nomination. Well, former Texas Republican Congressman Will Hurd, who has suspended his 2024 campaign, is now hoping the current GOP field can do the same for former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. He wrote in the Wall Street Journal, quote, "Miss Haley has the clearest path to victory, the character and credentials to lead, the willingness to take on Mr. Trump, and the conservative record needed to beat Joe Biden." Former Congressman Will Hurd joins me now. Congressman, thanks so much for being here.
Of course, always a pleasure to be on with you, Nancy.
So what does Nikki Haley bring to the table that you think the rest of the field doesn't?
Well, first and foremost, I have a lot of friends in this field, a lot of people that I think are great Republicans and great leaders of our country. But Ambassador Haley has momentum on her side. And also, we know how dangerous this world is. We're seeing that playing out in the Middle East right now. We see that on our border. She has direct experience with this issue. And the fact that she's focused on making sure America is focused on issues that matter, national security, border security, making sure education and the economy are our top priorities is something that I think she's uniquely qualified for.
Nikki Haley was asked over the weekend about Trump's comments suggesting that Mark Milley deserved the death penalty. Let's take a listen to her response.
Well, I just think it's irresponsible. I mean, you don't need to say things like that. I think that any man or woman that has served our country deserves the highest respect. My husband is a combat veteran. He is deployed right now.
Do you wish that she had called those comments disqualifying? I mean, you made a central theme of your campaign going after Mr. Trump as being unfit for office. You called out his divisive and crass behavior. Do you wish she had too?
I think she made it clear that she disagrees with those statements, and ultimately, she recognizes the importance of people that are going to that have served. And so, I think that argument, I didn't see in the entire statement, was accurate. And so, this is the kind of leadership I think we're going to need. And this is, for me, I don't want to see Donald Trump to become our nominee. It's not inevitable. Yes, he's the front runner, but he's beatable. And that's why it's important for us and donors and elected officials to start consolidating our support behind someone, because what happens between Halloween and Thanksgiving is going to be really important, have a really important impact on those early states. And you got to have momentum coming out of the early states when you hit Super Tuesday. And that's why I made the decision to wrap up our campaign. And I'm excited to support someone like Ambassador Haley.
If Mr. Trump is the nominee, will you support him or will you support Joe Biden?
Well, I haven't supported Joe Biden nor Donald Trump, and I don't plan on starting that now. That's why I'm looking forward to being able to support and vote for Nikki Haley. And I hope, and everybody doesn't have to take my word for it. You can go to nikkihaley.com and learn about her yourself. But to me, the country is faced with a number of generational defining challenges. We deserve better than having a rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. We need people that understand that friends around the world are important. We need people that understand having laws on our, and preventing people from coming into our border illegally is important. We need people that are going to make sure that our economy can thrive at a time when we have new technologies like artificial intelligence. This is what the country needs, and I'm hoping that's going to be Nikki Haley.
Your former place of business, the House of Representatives, is in the midst of a major challenge trying to figure out who the next speaker will be. Who do you hope that they go with?
Well, I kind of like Patrick McHenry, so I know he hasn't thrown his hat in the ring But the conference needs to come together quickly. We need to get a speaker. That speaker needs to recognize that we need to pass appropriations. We can't let the government get shut down in 40 days. We need to pass a DOD appropriations bill. We need to make sure that Uncle Sam is able to produce munitions so we can support our friends in Ukraine and in Israel and Taiwan. We need to make sure that the rest of the world recognizes that we're unified in protecting ourselves and our friends. We live in a dangerous world, and we should recognize that the attacks that Hamas has done in Israel could potentially metastasize in the other parts of the region, and we need to be prepared for that. And that starts with making sure we keep the government open and funded. They need to be passing the ambassadors and senior military folks so that our adversaries know that there's not going to be any holes that they can take advantage of.
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty on Capitol Hill right now. Former Congressman, former presidential candidate Will Hurd, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Nancy.
And that does it for today. Thanks for watching. You've been streaming CBS News. See you next time.
On Face the Nation, the way to learn is to listen.
We may have a recession.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understand.